It's time for Taking Care of Business on Midlands 103. With thanks to the local enterprise offices of Leash, Offaly and Westmeath. Find us on localenterprise.ie and let's talk business.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Taking Care of Business. I'm Ronan Berry, this is Midlands 103, and coming up over the next hour, costs are up, confidence is under pressure, and many small firms say they are running out of room to absorb further increases. Jonathan McDade will discuss the findings of the latest Small Firms Association survey and what policymakers must do next. Cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue. It's now becoming a leadership issue too. Nostra CEO Kevin O'Loughlin will discuss cyber insurance, business risk and how Irish companies can better protect themselves. And a café award with a wagging tail. Stephen Linehan from Beans and Leaves will join me later to chat about their Athlone dog-friendly success story and the real-world impact of the 9% VAT rate for cafés. And he'll also touch on those ever-increasing costs that are facing so many businesses out there at present. As I say, that SFA report will put some statistics around that and give us a real sense of exactly where business sentiment lies amongst our small firms. If you want to add your opinion or you want to join this evening's conversation, you can get me here in the studio on text or WhatsApp on 083 3010 103. That's of course powered by Lamb Brothers Toyota on the Arden Road in Tullamore. But to begin this evening, this is definitely one of the most intriguing and unusual business stories that I've covered on the show to date, because Meath native Neil McDermott spent decades in farming, farm machinery and international agriculture, headed one big business here in Tullamore for well over 20 years. But he's recently invested over €4 million into what he says is Ireland's first rejuvenation and wellness centre, based on the ancient Indian principles of Ayurveda. It's nestled in the Slieve Blooms mountains near Mount Rat. It is a fascinating investment. It's a fascinating project, and it really is another one that will put the Midlands firmly on the map when it comes to tourism and wellness and retreats. And I'd like to say Neil joins me here now. Good evening, Neil. Welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Good evening, Ronan, and thank you for asking me.
Before we touch on this latest venture, let's get a sense of the man behind all these, because your background, you literally came from Meath down to Edenderry, set up businesses in Tullamore. What type of business, what type of sectors, and when did it all start for you?
Oh, it all started with, primary school, and then I left primary school. Oh no, I went to school in Finian's and Mullingar, and I done my inter. And then I started basically vegetable growing on a very small scale and expanded that, and then started renting land and growing crops. I had 400 acres in 1975, which was a great year, and it was a great year for crops and prices, even though as a young lad the older farmers were saying, oh, he's a mad idiot giving so much rent for land at the time. And it worked out great. So then I subsequently bought a farm in Edenderry from that. And but farming is in my blood. I then went into the farm machinery business here in Tullamore. I bought Cap and Core Joinery. And we had a used farm machinery business there where we used to import them from England, repair them and guarantee them to sell them out to farmers. And we had 24 people working there.
So you're always somebody who was able to spot opportunities but take action on it as well, because it went from farm machinery, you started buying land both in Ireland, overseas too, even things like old houses, including, was it Ernest Shackleton's old house near Clonsill as well? What led you into the property sector after that, or the property side of things?
Well, all right, good question. I was going to go studying actually, and I found
wrong with that either.
I know, indeed, yeah, studying, yeah, and I found out that I wasn't made for studying. I couldn't really, I suppose, concentrate forever on it. But I found that my nature was actually, trading and getting involved. So I bought a site at the Red Cow, actually, in Dublin, and started building on it. And the building was built by a local builder here, Egan Brothers in Farban, or near Farban. And so that was my entry into that. And I bought Shackleton's place outside Dublin on 64 acres, and it turned out that it was potential development land, and it owes me nothing, yeah.
And that was sold, was it last year?
We sold the house and some of the land last back end. And now I'm involved in this project in Laois, on the southern slopes of the Slieve Blooms, with a wonderful view across the south of the country. And I'm very happy with this total new project, total new business. People call it the wellness business, but I don't. I think that's a worn cliche. I call it the rejuvenation business, whereby people can rejuvenate themselves. That's it.
And you've clearly seen there's a market for it, because this might be a relatively new venture, but your own interest in these ancient Indian principles was tweaked a couple of decades ago, though. How did that come about? Because what it's led to is quite fascinating.
Oh, fair enough, yeah. What happened, I got interested when I came across this Sanskrit word called Ayurveda, which means, Ayus means life or change, and God knows life is change, and Veda means knowledge of. So it's knowledge of life or change. And I said, how the hell could you know that? And then when I heard a few simple things, like it looks at your body in a holistic manner. So we'll say the likes of my body is determined as fire and earth and water. The terms in Sanskrit are pitta and kapha. So you have three types. You have airy, fiery, and watery and earthy. So an airy person, there's some of it in us all, but a very airy person would be always changing their minds, and you have a certain characteristic to be involved in art and various different things. Then a fiery type would be very accurate and pedantic about accuracy, but easy to anger. Excuse me. And then the Kappa type is water and earth, and they would be solid, good memory, and easy, or not easy to get angry, but if they did get angry, they'd have kill you. So that's the kind of the overall type of people. So we deal with the particular type of a person that comes in, and we help them to rejuvenate themselves.
Was it an important part of your own life and career to make that discovery?
It was. I went to India to find a place where I could do this, because I thought there was no such thing as rejuvenation. How the hell can you rejuvenate someone that's gone downhill? But I found a place in India, and I went there for 40 days, and I couldn't believe the change in my, dare I say, mind and body attitude to life. And yeah, I have no hesitation in saying I'm healthier now than I was 20 years ago.
And when did this dream or vision to actually open a rejuvenation centre come about? When did it become serious and you went, I'm going to do it? And how did you end up in Deer Park in Mount Rath?
Well, I got involved in a place in India, in the Nilgiris in southern India, with a young doctor that I had met who had treated me, and set him up on his own. And I'm a 50% shareholder in it. And it turned out great. And he always was very anxious that I'd help towards the spread of Ayurveda, which is this ancient knowledge. And between hopping and trotting, the next thing I saw this place advertised in Laois, and to cut a long story short, I ended up buying it, and this was the obvious use for it.
Yeah, and it came with it's on 10 acres, but you've added another 20 acres onto it as well. But like the €4 million investment, where did that go in? Was it on complete refitting? Have you added more features?
Yes, we've improved the business dramatically. Funny enough, it's Ian James Design, fellow from Tullamore here, my nephew, Ian McDermott, who calls himself Ian James Design. He has revamped the whole place from beginning to end with very high class fittings and all excellently done with handwork. So what can I do? Only go on people's observations when they see it. They're very happy with the finish that is in the building.
And Arunachala, is it? Arunachala is the business name, and if people
That's right.
just Google that, so ARUNACHALA.ie, just have a look and you'll see exactly what Neil is talking about. Neil, clearly there's a market though. Have you had much engagement from customers and users already? And maybe who is your target or your ideal customer?
Our ideal customer is someone between 30 and 60 that wants to improve their body, minds and hearts. Now, that's not saying that it's open to anyone that knows about Ayurveda. It's mainly aimed at people who it rings a bell for that Ayurveda would help them. And so it's to help healthy people to be more healthy, or or improve your health, no matter what sort of a state you're in, but it's not for chronic cases.
What's your expectations for it in terms of will it become a destination that gets well known, not just in Ireland but right across Europe or even over to the States? Do you see it as a place people will travel to come, and I guess there's a tourism benefit there too for County Laois and the wider region?
Yes, indeed. They come they come from all over Europe to the place in India, and yes, of course, the costs are a fraction in India is what they are here, but not everyone wants to go to India to be rejuvenated. So there is a huge opening for a place here in Ireland, and for the spread of the science of Ayurveda across Europe. Now, it's very well known in Germany, it's well known in Holland, less well known in France, well known in England. So we can be the epicentre for it in Ireland. And, if anyone wants to help in that area of Ayurveda, I'm open to helping them.
And I've given out the website there as well if people want to get in touch too. So it's almost like I'm not even going to say it's a lifelong dream, because this is like the next project on your list. I mean, you're 75 now. I mean, I'm not even going to mention the word retirement because it clearly doesn't come into your mind, and clearly an advocate for those ancient Indian principles as well. Is this it now? Is this your final one, or have you another idea or two in the head there that you probably won't even tell us?
Well, I often wonder how people don't see opportunities that are available, and we all have a particular talent. I don't give a damn what it is. We all have some little talent that we can express or make a living out of. Actually, I never forget one fella on building that we did in Dublin. All he was doing was selling little brackets for casing on concrete walls. This is all he had. He had a little tiny place, but he ran a huge business out of this. So there's so many examples of where people, if you see something in your own experience that you think would do well, take the risk if you're that way inclined. If you're not, don't. Stay in the job. Be happy drawing your wages at the weekend. But if you're anyway inclined that you want to be employed or that you want to be self-employed, take the risk, and as early as possible. And that's all I can.
Well, you started off giving us a very, very early example of still being almost at school age and starting your vegetable business. So clearly you could spot those opportunities and you weren't afraid to take the risks. And I can only imagine there's a couple more coming down the line. Neil, thank you so much for coming over this evening, and I look forward to learning more about it on taking care of business in the future.
Lovely. Thank you for speaking with me, Ronan, and very good.
Not at all. An absolute pleasure. Before Neil goes there, we'll take a short break, and after that I'll be joined by Jonathan McDade from the Small Firms Association. They've just released their latest small business survey, and whilst the numbers in it are probably not surprising, they really show the challenges that are faced by many of the small firms across the Midlands.
Taking care of business with thanks to the local enterprise offices of Linehan, Offaly and Westmeath. Find us on localenterprise.ie and let's talk business.
New figures from the Small Firms Association paint a worrying picture for the Midlands and Ireland's small business sector. Based on a survey of more than 400 small business decision makers conducted by Amoric Research, the findings suggest costs have risen by more than 44% over the past 3 years, while almost half of firms say they could run out of cash within 3 months if conditions don't improve. The SFA, which represents businesses with up to 50 employees, says the pressure facing small firms is intensifying. Public Affairs lead with the SFA, Jonathan McDade, joins me now to discuss what's happening on the ground for small businesses right across the country. Jonathan, that headline figure of cost rising by over 44% in just 3 years, it's quite stark and serious, I'd imagine.
It is. This is the third year that we've conducted this survey, and it's actually the third consecutive increase of a double-digit increase for small businesses. And look, with the other kind of stark figure that we found was that of the businesses that we surveyed, about 77% of them had reported an increase in costs in the past 12 months. Now, that figure is up from 49% surveyed in 2025, although in saying that, that 49% was added to the 44% who said that costs had stayed the same. So it's just further evidence that the cost base over the last 3 years has just continued to rise, and it has put a lot of pressure on small business owners, even though we are operating in a full employment economy, more or less, which is of course great news. But unfortunately, it's a combination of costs from, I suppose, state-imposed employment-related costs, which are the biggest driver of these costs. We've obviously had the fuel crisis propelled by events in the Middle East, which I suppose came out of nowhere this year, which have also contributed. And then, of course, there's the usual suspects that come along. There's commercial rates, and then there's, of course, insurance costs, which remain a key driver for these costs going up. And, there are three, I suppose, main concerns that, I suppose, small business owners approach the SFA about. Obviously, retention of staff is one thing, access to finance is another, but the main thing that they keep coming back to us from a business concern and a sort of a policy concern is the rise in costs as illustrated in our survey.
I think that's borne out today. There's talks of a deal being done to end the conflict in Iran. Yet the Road Haulage Association are out today saying that the fuel supports really need to be extended to the end of the year just to give businesses a chance. And I think, again, that just shows the perilous nature of being in small business at the minute. And again, because those costs, as you just highlighted there, they're coming from a myriad of different places. It's very hard to maybe even gauge those and judge those. And to then go seeking extra money or capital for your business must be a huge challenge for the businesses you're dealing with.
It is. I mean, access to finance is always a key sort of concern that many businesses have. And I think even in our survey, look, businesses in Ireland tend to be quite risk averse, which is good when it comes to debt. I think around 56% of businesses report having levels of debt of 5k or less, which isn't too bad. But I think 55% of small businesses say that short-term finance is a critical kind of has been a challenge to secure from various financial lenders, and that's actually up from 17% recorded last year. So the access to finance issue has become quite a serious sort of issue for small businesses over the last year.
Does the survey look into sources of finance? Are people discovering that the banks are becoming more risk averse at times like this? Is that a factor also for businesses?
It is in one sense, but at the same time, we have found in past surveys that there was an alarming number of small business owners that would have, I think maybe 1 in 5 business owners in previous surveys would have borrowed money from family or friends, which is unusual. But we have found that despite the challenges in accessing short-term finance, the number of businesses going to the pillar banks or raising finance from the pillar banks has actually gone up. I think it's around 64%, despite the fact that we have around over 70% of businesses saying that access to short-term finance is either difficult or very difficult. So it's a strange sort of oddity within these figures. I mean, the pillar banks are still the place that small businesses go to, but there are sort of challenges there. And look, that is a reflection on, yes, what you say, that the banks obviously would, due to historical issues that we could go back to, are a little bit more cautious when it comes to lending.
It's hard to believe, but we're at the time of year where many organisations and representative bodies are putting in their pre-budget submissions. The SFA, I assume, have done the same. You've made a number of calls for things and immediate support measures the government could bring in. Can you take us through some of those and the impact you think they will have for those small businesses?
Yeah, so we have put in our budget submission, but we haven't published the details just yet. But I suppose the benefit, which we will do shortly, I suppose for the benefit of your listeners, you can bet that the issues related to business costs will feature prominently in our budget submission. But we asked a specific question in this year's survey where we asked, what supports would you want? And of course, 9 out of 10 business owners said that they would support almost every option we gave in front of them. So you're looking at the expansion of VAT supports, support for utility costs, fuel allowances, the freeze in commercial rates, a PRSI rebate, which has been a budget ask of the SFA for the last few years, and a freeze in the national minimum wage. Now, all of them said yes. 9 out of 10 said we would love to have these supports in. And when we were kind of asking to prioritise the expansion of VAT supports, I think ranked the highest by a considerable amount in our survey. And look, that's obviously arising from the VAT supports that were introduced by the government, which don't go live obviously for a couple of more weeks. But obviously, I think the SFA in last year's budget submission, welcomed and supported the VAT reduction for the food hospitality sector. In the same breath, we also made the case to government that we would love to see that benefit apply for all businesses. But in the end, we were quite happy for our own members in that particular sector to receive the VAT 9 reduction.
I think any business owner probably sees the regular figures of record exchequer returns, and yet the increases, and you've documented these as part of that survey. They're evident for all to see. Despite all those, is there reasons for optimism from your findings too?
I suppose it all kind of depends in relation to what happens in the Middle East. I think the optimism is on what's going to arise from there. Now, in saying that, fuel costs will take a long time to come down, I think, but you're hoping that in the months and maybe year that things hopefully normalise and that fuel costs go down. Things will hopefully improve over time. But at the moment, arising from the Middle East, the crisis in the Middle East, which is not long after when we put this survey out into the field, we did note that 50% of businesses are reviewing their spending plans. 23% are pausing capital investment, and 15% have implemented kind of a pause on hiring. However, I think hopefully with the crisis in the Middle East easing somewhat, that those particular, I suppose, current trends will be reversed.
Hopefully sooner rather than later, that there isn't a long kind of attrition period as businesses readjust again and maybe wait for the next crisis to emerge. But a serious body of work, really interesting survey, great report as well. Jonathan McDade, thank you so much for that this evening.
Thank you.
Jonathan McDade is the public affairs lead with the Small Firms Association. If you just Google it there, you can find results of their Small Business Survey 2026. But yeah, some quite stark and concerning figures in there, and thanks to Jonathan for bringing those to us this evening. I don't want to scare the pants off you altogether, but I'll be talking to a cafe owner later on, and we'll talk about things like the VAT 9. That's going to be the VAT is going to be dropped again from the 1st of July. But again, another business that faces huge increase in costs and really reflects exactly what Jonathan has just told us there. But before that, I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to talk all things cyber security and cyber insurance, and why, even if you are a small business, you ain't safe and you ain't protected.
Taking care of business with thanks to the local enterprise offices of Linehan, Offaly and Westmeath. Find us on localenterprise.ie and let's talk business.
My next guest is no stranger to taking care of business, and he's built one of Ireland's fastest growing technology companies from what began as a small IT support business into an international managed services and cybersecurity provider employing hundreds of people. Kevin O'Loughlin is CEO of Nostra. He's a Laois native, an entrepreneur and one of the country's most outspoken advocates for better cyber resilience among Irish business. I'm delighted to say Kevin joins me now. Kevin, it's a message really you just cannot reiterate often enough about the need for cyber security.
That's pretty fair, Ronan. Yeah, cyber security is... Look, it has been for the last 15 years becoming more and more important every year, but with the emergence of AI and all the technology that's now available very cheaply, it means that attacks are happening much more often than they used to, and much more serious when they do happen. And to give you a simple example, you know, if you take a cul-de-sac and a road with 40 houses on it, historically, you know, somebody would go on and they attack the weakest house and break in. Now, ultimately, AI in 10 seconds can check every vulnerability in every house, break in, steal everything that's valuable, and get back out inside of a minute. And that's the difference between where it was a couple of years ago and where it is today.
I had a conversation on the show about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago about legacy PCs, particularly in a manufacturing environment where you've got that old computer with an old operating system that still needed to run an older machine but is now linked to a network. They're exactly those vulnerabilities that cyber security experts can now detect an awful lot quicker then.
Yeah, look, the bottom line is any security network is only as secure as the weakest link. And actually, you know, there's a framework which will be impacting lots of companies in Ireland in you know now and in the next couple of years, called DORA. And it's the concept of the DORA compliance methodology is that you have to look at every aspect of your business, but also your supply chain. And where we've seen a lot of cyber attacks, particularly this year, is through suppliers that supply to somebody else and they have access into their system in some way. You know, it can be a third-party application that's running and it gets broken into, and all of a sudden they're able to get into all of their customers. So, you know, cyber is something that's much more impactful on a much wider level than most people actually think about. And when you sit down and look for vulnerabilities in a network, you know, I would say we've never taken on a new customer and didn't find loads of vulnerabilities on day one. And even companies that we look after every couple of weeks, when we run vulnerability scanning and we test, we'll always find new things that have cropped up since the last time we tested. So it's a permanent fight.
Is cybersecurity now firmly established as a conversation at board level in companies? And if not, should it be?
Well, you know, technically it is meant to be there. It doesn't happen anywhere nearly as often as it should. And I think one of the key things and challenges is there's a lot of companies with a lot of directors and they don't actually fundamentally understand their own responsibilities. And if I take, you know, in our view, one of the ones that we've been beating the drum of for the last number of years, and it's still nowhere near where it needs to be. I would say, you know, I'd say 80% of the companies that we take on don't have the most basic critical piece of infrastructure, which is actually an immutable off-site backup. And at a base level, if a company has a cyber attack, a significant cyber attack, and they don't have an immutable off-site backup, their ability to recover from that cyber attack is as low as zero, and probably as high as 10 or 15% unless they want to pay a ransom, which you might not always be able to do. And, from a director responsibility perspective, I think what a lot of people don't realize is then, if that company goes bust, there's 15 employees or 50 or 100 people, and they're not able to find out who they owe money to. There's no systems to actually operate their business, and they close down, which does happen. Then the directors can be personally responsible if they haven't filled their duties. And one of their duties is to make sure that they have a backup and recovery plan, that they have a strategy, and that they have done the basics around cybersecurity. And unfortunately, way too many companies in Ireland haven't.
And some companies might have some form of a cyber insurance policy, but you've highlighted on LinkedIn recently how insurers are becoming a lot stricter now, and that many businesses maybe aren't even aware of the level they need to be at in order to qualify to get some form of cybersecurity cover.
Yeah, look, and this is a critical point, right? And a piece of advice to give to anybody is, whether you want to take out cyber insurance or not, and you should have it, but let's say you decide you don't have it, get the cyber insurance checklist from your insurance company, and they will say to you, if you want insurance, here's the 10 things that you need. And if you put in those 10 things, you're genuinely reducing your risk by about 90%. And the cost is often less than the cost of cyber insurance. But if you have cyber insurance and you don't keep on top of your cybersecurity, and you don't make sure that all of those ticks are ticked in terms of, backup, making sure that you're patching your systems, making sure you don't have old technology on your network, then in the event of a cyber attack, you're simply not insured even though you're paying for it. So the most important thing to do is follow the checklist. The second most important thing to do is to get cyber insurance.
And would cyber insurance typically cover the cost of a disruption to your business if there was a major cyber attack and you did happen to have it backed up off-site and it took, say, a week to restore it? Would cyber insurance typically cover that cost for a business? Yeah,
to be fair, cyber insurance, when it's properly covered and scoped, between it and business interruption insurance, they will probably look after, or probably properly look after companies and make sure that they're able to trade through it and they're able to manage it, and it covers elements of the losses and everything else. The insurance is good. But, if you think about it, same with a house, if you have a house and you have house insurance and you have a house alarm and you say it on the insurance policy and you don't set the alarm, you're simply not covered if your house is broken into. And it's the same philosophy. And what we're seeing more and more of is that internal IT teams are asked to fill in these cyber insurance forms. They fill them in ultimately to get the insurance in place, but the insurance is totally invalid because they have answered the questions incorrectly.
Yeah, that's sage advice indeed, because again, I think, and the example of the house insurance is a great example, because if people look at it under that lens, they'll understand why they need to get it in place. I've just spoken to Jonathan McDade there from the SFA about rising business costs. They've documented that in their latest survey. Is it something though for smaller businesses, even business with under 50 people, that is it a cost base that's just not possible for them to kind of absorb at the minute? Or are businesses beginning to get up to speed with exactly what they need to do there?
I would say, so from an insurance point of view, it's important. I would say it's a lot less expensive than people think. But I would say the basics in cyber protection are not as expensive as people think. But most people go around blindly either thinking that they have the right cover in place. And, I have sat in boardrooms on, numerous occasions in the last 12 months and probably 50 occasions in the last 5 years, and sat across from somebody who's had a cyber attack. And they, in their own opinion, felt they were fully secure and fully in a safe place. And they were as far from it as you can imagine. And it comes from, people who don't know what they're doing, telling them that they're actually okay. And also there's an element of, well, I'm 20 years in business. I've never had a cyber attack, so it's not going to happen to me. But what you'll actually find is if you have a cyber attack, one of the most shocking things that happen, if you start talking to other business owners about it, they'll start sharing, well, we've had a cyber attack. And if every business actually shared the cyber attacks that they had, I think everyone in the world would realize how significant and how common they are. But the majority of cyber attacks are completely hidden under the carpet. Nobody is to know whether it's not even staff or customers, and it's designed and announced as an IT outage or, a system upgrade or whatever. But, if people knew how often cyber attacks happened, they would absolutely make a different set of decisions. And, if I take in our organization, we probably have 50 people every single day working on cyber. We're one of a number of companies in Ireland who do it. Like, we've got, there's hundreds of people in our business. But, 20% of our engineering team are just dealing with cyber incidents, events on a daily basis. It is far more common than people think, and really need to wake up and understand how serious it is out there.
Absolutely, and we add in the additional risk from AI and other emerging risks as well. It becomes a scary story. But I think the sound advice there this evening is it may not be as expensive as you think to actually protect it, and there's very good value to be getting on cybersecurity insurances, and find a backup your data, back up your company data, and then that's a good starting point. Kevin, a pleasure as always. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Ronan. Mind yourself. Take care.
Not all. And there you go. I mean, that's great advice from Kevin O'Loughlin there. Nostra.ie if you want to check out Kevin's company. But look, if you take those 3 points and starting on that this evening or tomorrow morning, your company will be in a lot better place already. It's doable, it's affordable, it's essential. Now, time for a quick break. After that, we're going to meet a cafe owner. They picked up a really interesting award late last week. But he'll also talk about the rising costs in their business and the increased cost of living that ultimately affects anybody in the hospitality sector.
Taking care of business with thanks to the local enterprise offices of Linehan, Offaly and Westmeath. Find us on localenterprise.ie and let's talk business.
Beans and Leaves in Athlone picked up one of the more interesting awards I've come across lately, late last week. They've just been crowned as the dog-friendly venue. They got the dog-friendly venue award at the Pet Mania Ruby Heart Awards. Stephen Linehan, the owner, joins me now. Good evening, Stephen. A really interesting accolade to get. How did you and the team feel after you were announced as the winners?
First of all, good evening, Ronan. Delighted to be on your show. We were surprised. We were overjoyed. It was a great accolade for the restaurant to get. We purposely a couple of years ago set out to attract owners with dogs. My family is very much involved with animals and dogs, and we just decided it was something. The government changed legislation which allowed animals to come inside a restaurant, and we embraced it. We've been in the hospitality business for over 38 years. We love what we do, and we treat animals nearly the same way as our customers. We love seeing them come in, and customers love the fact that they can bring their dogs in. So yeah, we were absolutely overjoyed. Lots of congratulatory messages, social media went mad, and it's increased business, so it's a win.
What did you do to adapt the restaurant to make it more dog friendly?
Small things make it easier for people. So we provide individual rugs and blankets for all the dogs. As you can imagine, the floor in the restaurant is not carpet, it's hard tile, so it makes it more comfortable for the dogs to sit down. We offer the dogs water and treats when they come in. It's important for owners to know that the staff are comfortable with dogs, so all of our staff are very comfortable with animals. They will introduce themselves to the dog to let the dog know that they're not a threat. And once, believe it or not, people that have dogs treat them as good as their children. And once they know their dog is being looked after well, they relax. Dogs have a great sense. They can sense if they're liked or not liked, and that creates its own thing. We've had a couple of interesting ones. The revenue commissioners have used us once or twice for training of their sniffer dogs. So they'll bring in dogs in and to get them accustomed with people and different people. So that's, and we got a nice picture from revenue commissioners with a couple of dogs we had helped train. We get dogs that would be abandoned and beaten, and these have to be reintroduced back to society, and they would have a natural fear of predominantly male. So it's getting them to used to that. So that's welcoming and nice. And we collaborate with the Irish Midlands guide dogs. We do a lot of fundraising for them. So that's our sort of charity side as well.
Wow, yeah, it goes far deeper than just a bowl of water and a welcoming biscuit as well. And nice to have a really positive engagement with revenue, if I must say. But I guess for any business in hospitality, to diversifying what you can do and making yourself attractive to customers is key, because you were keen to talk also, like the SFA report that I went through earlier on the show, like cost for businesses are up. It's shown an average up 44% in 3 years. Are you seeing that yourselves at Beans and Leaves?
Look, it's crazy. We're constantly being inundated with price increases. And a lot of the price increases are stealth by 1,000 deaths, or cuts by 1,000 cuts, sorry. Your supplier might keep the price constant, but we now have service charge on deliveries. We have a fuel surcharge on deliveries. Now, it's quite small. It's $2.50, but it's $2.50 per item per delivery. So when you're getting 3 or 4 items delivery, it mounts up. Insurance has gone up again, rates have gone up again. Now, in fairness to Westmeath County Council, they did put up our rates, but they gave us a clawback on it. So as long as you're paying your rates, they'll give you a credit. So the net effect is probably the same as last year. Electricity, gas, gone through the roof. Absolutely. Like, I'm paying nearly double in utility bills at the moment. Staff wages, an extra 15% every single week now. Minimum wage has gone up again. Whilst I don't disagree with increase in minimum wages, people have to realise the government policy over the last couple of years has made us become what's called a high wage society. Now, if people want a high wage society, and we all want people to get a fair wage for a fair day's work, they're going to have to realise there's a cost with that. And that means your cup of coffee is going to go up. Your breakfast bap is going to go up.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of business owners would say that when the minimum wage increases, it's the next level. Then people maybe who are on a slightly more senior role or even lower level management, their wages aren't as well. It's the knock-on accumulated as well, because yes, there's a cost of living crisis that many people are still feeling. So when it comes to getting people in the door, there's a significant moment potentially coming on the 1st of July. The VAT rate is going to drop back to 9%. Is that going to make a difference, you think, for businesses like yours?
It's going to be an absolute lifesaver for all businesses, It's what we've been needing to happen. We have high operational costs at the moment. We're dealing with energy bills, wage pressure and supply chain inflation. When all of this comes into effect, we don't like putting up our prices. I mean, we are a daytime cafe. We're a daytime restaurant. We rely on people popping in and popping out. Bearing in mind, I don't think a lot of people realise it, I pay the same wages as going to a high-class restaurant, but yet the high-class restaurants will get a bigger spend, if you know what I mean. Like, they're charging 40, 50 euros for their main courses. I'm getting 17, 18 euros for a main course. Last week I had to take off fish and chips because it was breaking what I considered the barrier. I was going to have to be charging 22 or 23 euros. And that's becoming the norm now. You're seeing restaurants taking off steak because it's become too expensive. So certainly the impact of the VAT reduction will lower our input pressures for restaurants. It'll free up cash flow to reinvest in staff, utilities and stock. And it'll help stabilise, importantly, menu prices, offering better value during the tough economic times that are coming ahead.
I'm sure it's not the be-all and end-all either. I'm sure you'd like to see more support, would you, particularly with the budget coming up in September, October?
Yeah, look, I'm not one of these people that blow out and blame the government for everything. The government have been good to us. There's no two ways about it. I mean, there's grants available. There is a lot of paperwork. You have to go through it. And if you do it all, if you go through all the loops, dot all the I's and cross the T's, you will get the grants. We got grants there about a year or two ago, and we changed all of our equipment inside in the restaurant. We changed all our fridges. We changed our ventilation, and the government paid me 70% towards the cost of it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there is grants available. There's grants available for websites. We got our shop front redone up recently. We got new canopies. So the government do their bit. We would like to see a little bit more. Certainly excise duty needs to come down. I think they need to look at the PRSI contributions that employers are making. There should be some type of rebate. But look, that's up to the powers to be.
Very much like the SFA have called for. Stephen, I'm going to have to let you go. Thank you so much for that this evening. I am just out of time here now. But there you go. That's coming from somebody operating a business on the ground as well. Thank you to everyone this evening. Hope it's been useful for you. I'll talk to you all next Tuesday from 7.